Hi, this is Hannah with Hurricane Volleyball Club, and today we'll be talking about a 4-2 formation. A 4-2 formation is very common in middle school and in young travel programs where your athletes are just getting used to the game of volleyball. In a 4-2, you have 4 hitters and 2 setters at all times. Only one of your setters is ever active, and in a 4-2, the setter who is in the front row is your active setter. As I mentioned in my previous video, your idea and goal is for your setter to get to right front as quick as possible in your formation. There are 2 different ways that this can work. When you are serving, your players stack on the net. That means that your setter, outside hitter, and middle will get as close to each other as they can, and then as soon as your team serves, you'll switch. But when you're doing serve-receive, that is not the most optimal way of doing things. First of all, you're blocking your own defense. Your players who are about to serve-receive are less likely to be able to see the ball. Another thing is you only have 3 players receiving the ball during serve-receive when you have this switch happening. So, during serve-receive, you're going to switch a little bit different than a stack. Let me go ahead and start showing you how this would look. As you all may see on this board, I have OH representing the outside hitter. I have M representing middles. And I have S1 and 2 representing my 2 setters. As you can see, our players are often put on the court diagonally from each other or across from each other. My middles are across from each other, my setters are across from each other, and my outside hitters are also across from each other. This is the simplest way to keep track of where you are on the court, to make sure as soon as you step onto the court, you are across from the person that you're supposed to be across from. In each play, you'll look to see and make sure that you're still in the correct rotation. As you noticed, as rotations move around, there will always be one setter, always be one middle, and always be one outside hitter. This is why they are across from each other, so that you never have those gaps. If we started in this formation, we have an issue though. We want our setter to get to right front as quickly as possible, and right now she's in left front. If our team is serving, we can then utilize the stack option I mentioned earlier. When you stack, you bring your players in, usually towards the center of the court, so that they can make a switch. What I would usually recommend players to do is have their setter be the one that's tightest to the net. This is because oftentimes your team will pass the ball and it'll go close to the net, and you want your setter to be able to play it. So we have our setter here. As soon as your player serves, the setter would then move into this position here. Your middle would back up into this position after the outside hitter has gone to the outside. Let me show you what that would look like. Once you're in this position, everyone is where they need to go. All your team has to do is make sure that at the beginning of the next serve, they get back to where they started. If your team wins that serve point and your teammate continues to serve, you'll continue to switch in the same way as what I just showed you. But once the other team wins the point, you can no longer stack on the net. The better option for you when your team is playing defense against the other team's serve is for 2 of your players to drop back to the 10-foot line, and that would be your 2 attackers. As you can see, everybody is still across from the person they're supposed to be across from. The setters are still diagonally across from each other. The outside hitters are still diagonally, and so are the middles. We've just shifted where everybody is a little bit. We've had these 2 players drop back to the 10-foot line. The reason for this is if they are tight on the net, they can't play any balls that come over. They're basically useless. They have no function on the court other than to block the view of their teammates who are in the backcourt. So what they'll do is they'll drop off. This will also give our setter a clear path to move to her zone in the front. There's still one problem though. Our outside hitter is closer to the middle of the court than our middle hitter. And having them switch when the ball's coming over is going to cause chaos on the court. So what a coach will often tell their players is stay for one. One means one play. So what will happen is our setter will move over to her zone in right front. But the outside hitter will stay in the middle for one play, and the middle hitter will hit outside for one play. As soon as your team attacks the ball and sends it over to the net, these two players can switch back to their usual positions. Let's see what that would look like. So, let's say your team wins the point, and you rotate. In volleyball, we rotate just like a clock. So, our setter, who started out in left front, would then move to middle front. Our middle would move over and become right front. Our outside hitter would move over and become left front. And to check to make sure you're doing everything correctly, you would just want to look at the player who is across from you in the back row. So this is where you would start out for your serve. As you can see, again, middles are across, setters are across, outside hitters are across. If you all remember, when we are serving the ball, we get to go and stack on the net. We always want the setter to be the one closest to the net. And then our other players want to be just staggered enough that they don't run into each other while they're switching. Luckily, in this position, our outside hitter was already where she needed to be. So then it's just our middle and setter who are going to be switching. As soon as the serve happens, the setter will move to right front and the middle will stay in the center of the court, like this. And that is how your players will switch until the other team wins the point. When the other team wins the point, you have to again be creative and not stack on the net because you do not want to block the view of your teammates, and you also do not want to just have 3 players passing on your team. So what's going to happen is your middle hitter and your outside hitter are going to drop back to the 10-foot line. This is going to give your team more options for passers. As you can see, our setter is still tight on the net. As soon as the serve is contacted, the setter will then move over to their position in right front. Your outside is already in position, and your middle only has to shuffle a couple steps over to make sure they're in an optimal location to beset the ball. If your team was successful and won that point, then you're able to rotate again into this position. As you can see, our setter is already in the base that we want her to be in, right front. But our outside hitter and middle are not in their correct positions. The outside is where the middle should be, and the middle is where the outside hitter should be. This is a relatively easy fix. Because your team is about to serve, all that these 2 players need to do is stack on the net. So, your middle would move over, and so would your outside, so that as soon as the serve happens, those players can move where they need to go. The middle would just shuffle over slightly, and the outside would move over into their correct base. Easy fix. In this situation, you have the same type of idea. Your outside, when the other team is serving, drops back to the 10-foot line to pass, and your middle drops to the 10-foot line to pass. Like we said earlier, sometimes this happens where they have to drop back to pass, but they're not in the position that we actually want them to be. So these players will stay for 1. This means that they will stay in that position until their team attacks the ball and sends it over the net. And then these 2 will switch. When that happens, they'll be in their actual positions where they need to be to attack the ball. When the team rotates the next time, something is going to happen that has not happened before in this video. Your setter that we've had this entire time is going to be moving into the back row. When that setter moves into the back row, they are no longer the active setter. And the active setter is S2. The one who's been in the back row the whole time will become the setter now. So, as you all will be able to see in a moment, when I'm done drawing this out, we have a new setter. This is the same formation that we started out with at the beginning of the video. And when we started out here, we had to make the setter move the furthest distance. But even though we have a new setter, the movement's going to be the same for our team. I hope this video helped you understand a little bit more about what your responsibility is as a setter, middle, and outside hitter on a front row in a 4-2 rotation. Thank you so much for watching, and if you would like to learn about a 6-2 formation, please click on the next video. Thank you. Have a good one.